Lastly, they honor Leslie Nielsen in a truly great and utterly bizarre way that is incredibly fitting for his work on The Naked Gun and just his comedic career in general. I thought it was really nice and appropriately ridiculous. Let's go ahead and move on to my review for The Naked Gun, the new one. I am a fan of the original Naked Gun films. It's been a long time since I've seen the sequels. I'm mostly familiar with the original Naked Gun, which came out in the late 80s. Of course, starring Leslie Nielsen, directed, created by the Zucker brothers, who gave us a lot of great comedies, during the 80s, during that decade. Kind of defined comedy for so many years. And that film, that initial film, and really all the films in the series, as far as I know, were really big critical and commercial successes. They all made a lot of money. And Leslie Nielsen, who is probably so well known nowadays for his comedies, but even years before, decades before, he was starring in action films, sci-fi films, thrillers. Kind of reinvented himself as a comedic actor, I would say, in the 1980s with Airplane, thanks to the Zuckers. But that first movie, and especially after rewatching it so recently during our Wednesday watch party, just made me really appreciate even more. I have a renewed appreciation for them. There's so many aspects of that movie that still holds up. And, sometimes comedy becomes, really dated, especially if you make just like tons and tons of references, pop culture references. That can age you pretty goddamn quick. But there's something so universal about The Naked Gun. So much of the humor, just the deadpan nature of it, how everyone is taking it so seriously, but at the same time, you just have all this chaos, this ridiculousness in the background and in the foreground, but like all the performers, especially Leslie Nielsen, is just taking it so damn seriously. And that's what makes it so funny. And I think that's why those films are looked upon so kindly to this day, decades later. So a lot of appreciation for that first film and obviously the sequels from what I remember. But when it comes to this new movie, when it was announced they were going to do a new one and that they were going to cast Liam Neeson, it was like, wow, that's perfect. That sounds great. Also, the fact that you have like one of the Lonely Island guys directing this. The movie, people don't know, the movie's directed and co-written by Akiva Schaffer of the Lonely Island, coming off of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, which I had a lot of misgivings about. I was like, all right, this is going to be like another Space Jam or Looney Tunes back in action. You're just going to be trying to chase the coattails of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And it wasn't that. It was very much akin to something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. In a positive way, it was surprisingly smart, funny, had some great moments that really worked for me. Is it as good as that original film? No, it's hard to be. I think that's one of Robert Zemeckis' best movies. Not his best movie. It's a masterpiece. But Akiva Schaffer and his people did a great job. And all the elements, leading to this film. Akiva Schaffer, a lot of those guys involved. Liam Neeson, taking over as Frank Drebin as the lead from Leslie Nielsen. It's like, this just sounds like it could work. It sounds good. And then the teaser trailers and the trailers that we saw were like surprisingly funny. And it's like, all right, maybe we'll get a actually good comedy legacy sequel, right? Well, to give you a brief synopsis before getting into the nitty-gritty details, essentially The Naked Gun, it follows Frank Drebin Jr., played by Liam Neeson, who stumbles onto this conspiracy essentially involving an AI-run crime syndicate. And with help from a very self-aware femme fatale played by Pamela Anderson, and his action-prone partner, played by Paul Walter Hauser, Drebin's slapstick investigation turns into just a whirlwind of accidental heroics, as his father before him. I'll tell you guys the top. Overall, The Naked Gun, the new edition, is that rare, funny legacy sequel that manages to honor the irreverent spirit of the original Abrams Zucker films, while also, I think, injecting just enough new flair to make it work for a lot of today's audiences. Now, not every single joke lands in the movie, but it manages a tricky balance between homage and update. making, I think, both a nostalgic return to the franchise, but also a fresh comedy in its own right. Like, I would argue you can watch this film having not seen the original Naked Gun movies, and it still will work for you. I mean, if you've watched at least the first one, then be like, oh, okay, you'll understand maybe a little bit more of the connection, especially with Frank Drebin Jr. and his father. But I appreciate the fact that this movie doesn't feel the need to constantly bring up the past. It does it fleetingly throughout the film or in really intelligent ways, but it doesn't feel the need to just regurgitate the same jokes or the same plot or characters that you've seen. In terms of the things that I think really work about the film, that are like honestly perfect about the film, Liam Neeson is great. He is just deadpan perfection throughout this entire movie. Getting him as a successor, the son of Leslie Nielsen, again, was perfect. It was a perfect casting choice. He absolutely nails it through most of the movie. Neeson just channels the same oblivious confidence and just stone-faced delivery that made Leslie Nielsen just legendary. In the latter half of his career, and certainly in his movies, his towering, presence and, Neeson's gravelly voice just contrast hilariously, with all the film's absurd scenarios. And there's a lot of absurd scenarios in this movie. Some great sequences, some fantastic physical gags. He consistently just plays it straight. And that's exactly what makes it funny. He's the anchor of chaos. And the more serious he is, the more ridiculous everything around him inevitably feels. Now, when it comes to the rest of the cast, Pamela Anderson, I think, is a big scene stealer in this movie. I think she's having the time of her life, and I think it really shows. She's essentially playing a parody of her own public image. She just brings this surprisingly, sharp comic timing and a lot of unexpected warmth I think is necessary for this film. Her chemistry with Neeson is, oddly compelling. And they're great together. You like it when they're together. I think some of the best moments of the film are when they're together. Some of my favorite sequences, actually. And she subverts, I think, a lot of expectations with a role that's, equal parts, blonde bombshell, curve sticking out, boob sticking out to here, and also a buffoon. She's in on the joke. And I think she elevates every scene that she's in. She's really good in this movie. And also, Paul Walter Hauser. Anytime Paul Walter Hauser shows up in something, he's bringing his A game. Even if the movie itself is it might be whatever. He is consistently great. He's just one of those awesome character actors. Oh, that guy. He was in a recent movie that I just saw. And I won't say exactly what he played in that film, but I thought he did a great job there. I wanted more of him. Anytime you see him, it's I want more of this guy, right? And he's great as the son of Captain Ed from the original films too. And his physical comedy, I think, is just on point. And he brings kind of that lovable doofiness that also kind of recalls a bit of O.J. Simpson's, Nordberg too, without feeling like a carbon copy. Well, definitely not a copy. Paul Walter Hauser and O.J. Simpson, very different from each other. And I don't think Paul Walter Hauser has murdered two people. He's goofy, without being grating. And I think his delivery just has that right mix of cluelessness and a lot of sincerity. He has a particularly great physical gag in the film's third act that involves children. And it's one of my, and the third act in general is just one of the strongest, parts of the film. And his sequence is really good in that part of the movie. Danny Houston is in it. Danny Houston, guess who he's playing, chat? He's the bad guy. Danny Houston is essentially just playing a parody of the bad guy he so often plays in so many other movies. He has great chemistry with Neeson, and he gets to play around with a lot of the action sequences too. Again, especially towards the film's third act. The third act of this movie is, I think, very good. It doesn't peter out or anything, which I think sometimes is the case with a lot of comedies. And I think the film just shines brightest when it embraces the Zucker-style rapid-fire gags, slapstick and the visual absurdity of everything. I don't want to reveal too much I sometimes I feel like I struggle to review comedy sometimes because I want to highlight the things that really work for me, but I don't want to give anything away. Obviously, I don't want to ruin the jokes for you guys. But all I'll say is, there's two moments in the film that I thought were just great. There's a bit involving a malfunctioning, self-driving police cruiser that just turns into a full-blown disaster. It just filled with pure chaos, really well choreographed, very funny. Another montage involving a snowman, one of the best bits of the movie, that's all I'll say. And the dialogue overall is just packed with, what you'd expect with a Naked Gun movie or a comedy of this type. Wordplay, puns, throwaway jokes that will reward repeat viewings, and it also manages to land some satire in there too. Include some satire, I should say. Poking fun at everything from AI paranoia, influencer culture, without getting too self-righteous or preachy. And there's actually some some really good gross out humor in this movie as well. They make farts funny again, Chad. Well, farts have always been funny, but it depends on how you use them. And this movie uses them well. Now, despite all its strengths, some of the humor feels kind of forced. It doesn't always land. A few scenes, I think, lean too heavily into some lazy pop culture references. There's a really long bit with a TiVo and a conversation about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and another one about Janet Jackson Super Bowl halftime show. A few others like that just kind of feel out of place in a film that I feel like otherwise handles its silliness pretty well. I think they could have also had maybe a little bit more fun of skewering the tech industry. Maybe going after certain, tech icons, your Musks, your Zuckerbergs, your Cooks, those kind of people. But outside that, they do a pretty good job. And lastly, and I was really happy about this because I wonder if they were going to do this, and I won't say too much. Lastly, they honor Leslie Nielsen in a truly great and utterly bizarre way that is incredibly fitting for his work on The Naked Gun and just his comedic career in general. I thought it was really nice and appropriately ridiculous. In the end, Naked Gun, I think, is far better than it had really any right to be. It's a rare comedy legacy sequel that respects its roots without constantly being trapped by them. It doesn't feel the need to throw cameos at you or repeat the same exact jokes from the original films, unlike some recent comedies, for example, legacy comedies, for example. And I think thanks to Liam Neeson's, Pitch Perfect deadpan, Pamela Anderson's charm, buffoonish charm, and Paul Walter Hauser's just physical acting and hilarity, it delivers, I think, big laughs more often than not. A few misfires, I don't think, ruin the experience overall. This is one of the funniest kind of big budgeted studio comedies that I've seen in years. It's a rare modern slapstick that actually works. The only other comedy I can think of in the last few years, and it certainly isn't a big budgeted one, is Hundreds of Beavers, which I love, which was done on a shoestring budget, I think, with maybe less than $1 million, I'm sure. Not that much at all. This is the funniest movie I've seen, since then. There's a lot to love about this film, and I think if you're a big fan of the original movies and this type of comedy, there's a lot you're going to get out of it. And I'm sure on repeat viewings there'll be stuff that I'm sure there's stuff I missed. But yeah, overall, Naked Gun, a really pleasant surprise and a film that I recommend you guys check out. But what about you guys? I'm curious, how many of you have seen the movie? Are you a lot more like me where you're like, this was actually really good? Maybe a few things didn't always land, which often the case of a lot of comedies. What I might find funny, you may not find funny, vice versa, of course. Were you more mixed on it? You're like, some stuff was funny, maybe some other stuff wasn't funny, more 50-50. Or did you downright hate it? You're just like, I don't want comedies like this. No, thank you. Let me know.
5 minutes later.
Let me see what you guys are saying. Yeah, the 100 Beavers, that's right. $150,000 budget. I was like, it definitely wasn't $1 million. It was less than that. No, thank you. It was like $300K. Thank you, Deadpool. It's insane what they're able to do with that budget. Incredible. I want to see those guys do more and more work. They're great. But Naked Gun, I would say, is the funniest movie I've seen since Hundreds of Beavers. Let's see what you guys are saying. Biggie Smith says high hopes for this. Well, I hope you like it. I think it's worth checking out. See, you have a big audience. See, you have a really big audience. KC, yo, Chris, hope the reviews are well. Oh, they're going well so far. I'm at Evo right now watching the panel for Invincible versus, the video game. Got some cool things to share. Like, nice. Very nice. So, thanks for the review. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Yeah, no, I recommend it. I think it's a really fun film. You know, again, most of the comedy, I think, really does land. I think Liam Neeson he's perfectly cast as this. Liam Neeson has had such an interesting career where, you know, starting out, seeing him pop up in things, I think, since, like, the 70s. And then, you know, well into the 80s and the 90s, blowing up, Oscar nominated for, you know, Schindler's List and things. And then he had that era in the mid-2000s where he was the old man action star. And now he's kind of in this new phase of his career where he's the comedian. It kind of, in a weird way, mirrors Leslie Nielsen, doesn't it? Who kind of reinvented himself like several times throughout his entire career, appearing in everything from dramas to B horror films, you know, like Day of the Animals fighting a grizzly bear, giving some really good performances throughout his entire career, and then kind of reinvented himself as this expert straight man, this leading man comedian. It's really interesting. So kind of on a similar trajectory in a way. So he's perfectly cast throughout the, you know, and it's showcased throughout the entire movie. Liam Neeson is going to start another channel of good actors doing silly good. Yeah, I think that'd be fun. It'd be fun to see. And there's this thing is packed to the brim of so many things that I just really enjoyed that I thought were hilarious. I think you guys are gonna get a kick out of it. Again, I don't want to reveal anything. You know, I don't want to reveal too much. I want you guys to experience them for yourself. Yeah, Ted 2. Yeah. He's one of the best parts of Ted 2. Well, it's like that. I think, and funny enough, Seth MacFarlane's actually a producer on this movie. And I think him and Liam Neeson have like a pretty good relationship. I know that he also did the comedy. I think what was it, A Million Ways to Die in the West or something like that from a few years ago, like a decade ago now at this point. And but yeah, you're right. In Ted 2, where he's essentially playing his Taken character, he's like, he's trying to buy the box of tricks. He's like, tricks are for kids. Like, I can buy this. Or he's like, yeah, you can buy it. I thought that was great. That was really funny. Chosen. It's definitely the funniest movie I've seen this year. Was laughing all the way through. I haven't laughed out loud another movie this year, maybe once or twice in Minecraft. I sat there in stony silence during my. No, I think I chuckled once. I can't tell you what it was. I don't remember what the scene was, but I think I chuckled. I went, huh. I did one of those, but I can't remember what the scene was to save my life. There's been other like movies I've seen this year where I've definitely, you know, laughed, but they weren't comedies. They had comedic moments, for instance, like Novocaine had comedic moments, Companion had comedic moments. Hell, even Sinners had comedic moments. Like those types of films, obviously, you did. K-pop Demon Hunters, you know, but not like a pure comedy, which is what this is. Yeah, with you know, action, you know, in there a little bit. Obviously, you know, it's like a cop, you know, comedy. But yeah. Return of good comedy movies. Yeah, I know it's been a long time, and I'm hoping this does very well. Obviously critically, but certainly commercially, and where studios will start to green light more of these types of films. Because it'd be good to see these types of movies. It's just, I feel like there's just been a lot of bad ones. There's been a lot of, like most recently, I haven't seen it, but like Happy Gilmore, for instance, like of what I have seen of that movie, it looks fucking terrible. Where it's doing the exact opposite of what Naked Gun is doing. Where it's just like, we're just gonna do the same thing that we did in the first film and bring out the same jokes and gags. I'm like, that's fucking lazy. That's really fucking lazy. Like with this movie, it's the same type of humor, but it's not like it's the same exact joke, like word for word, or same exact sequence or anything, you know? And Happy Gilmore, from what I can tell, is doing all that. And I can't stand it. I can't stand it. 30 years for man's laughter. Must have been some joke. Yeah, the way he delivers it. It's great. Like he never breaks. He never fucking breaks. Never cries. Nor should he. Yeah. Yeah, and they used to show he has comedic job. Yeah, it's true. Even Darkman. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, so I'm hoping they do more of these. They easily could do a sequel. You know, sequels. Do a whole new Naked Gun trilogy, Idol before it. But you know, we'll inevitably see. Hoping so.